There's an old saying that if you find yourself losing control of a car and are about to crash, you should steer into the skid. Sometimes leaning into the crash is the only way to get through it.
Wise up, folks. We're all alone out there, and tomorrow we're going out there again.
I'm so embarrassed. I'm not a real person yet.
Ambivalence is a disease. I think I have a disease called ambivalence.
It takes a lot of nerve to have nothing at your age. Don't you understand that? Yeah, most guys would be ashamed, but you've got the guts to just say the hell with it.
Being in your 20s can sometimes feel like a long car crash. Just when you feel like you've got control of the wheel again, you're suddenly skidding. You feel like you're jumping from one disaster to the next, and just when you have one side of life figured out, another side goes up in flames.
Clean up this mess. Can we keep it clean for 10 minutes?
I haven't made anything on this channel in about 10 months, and not because I haven't wanted to. For a while, it felt like I was in one long skid. I was stuck in a job I hated. I wanted to change, but it felt like nothing was changing. Everything felt stagnant, and sometimes stagnancy can make you feel completely out of control. The normalcy of it all feels stifling, almost as though your life is swerving onto a path you don't want, that you're going to be stuck there with no way out. And after sitting in this state for a while, that's when it arrives, the quarter-life crisis. A cloud of doubt that tells you that you're doing everything completely wrong, that you're the biggest fuck-up on the planet and heading in the wrong direction. It starts to feel like a permanent state of failure, scrambling for a sign towards the right path and resigning yourself to the possibility that you might carry on sinking. But what if this period isn't the crisis we imagine it to be? We're told that the only way is up, but what if we're looking at it in the wrong way? I've complained enough about the various emotional plights that come with being in your 20s on this channel, but this isn't about that. This is a video about getting yourself out of a rut, how to fail, and steer into the skid. Welcome back to Pompous Unhelpful Knit, and to my quarter-life crisis. We often have intense relationships to the idea of failure in our 20s. Failure, or what I perceive as failure, has been a running theme throughout this decade so far. While I've been through many bouts of feeling bad about myself and what I think I should have done so far in my life, it's a feeling that grew into a new shape over the last year or so. Sometimes it's a stagnant fear. Other times it spurs you on to work harder, to keep going, or it paralyzes you to the point where you feel you can't do anything. Sometimes you feel as though hard work is embarrassing if it doesn't yield results, leading you to resign yourself to inadequacy and settle, letting your life float onto a path that you don't particularly want. While my fear of failure previously motivated me to work harder and take more risks, it began to evolve into something else after beginning what will now be described as the job from hell. And in order to get to the crux of this video, we need to go back to my first day. If you'd asked me last year, I would have described this job as my dream job, a creative role where I was paid to write about films every day. It sounds great, but I very quickly realised that it was nothing like I thought it would be. But at this point, none of the early red flags I saw had manifested in a hurtful way, and when you have bills to pay, there isn't much you can do besides stick it out. As I mentioned before on this channel, life is like a triangle, and you can't have all three sides figured out at any given time. During my 20s, I found that the job side of this triangle has always fallen flat. You're often forced to pick between fulfillment and financial stability, settling for a job that pays the bills and looking elsewhere for meaning so that you don't want to kill yourself. Or you work for someplace meaningful that only barely pays the bills, living in a shitty flat or only spending £100 a week, which also kind of makes you want to kill yourself. You toe the line between fulfillment and dissatisfaction, wondering if balance can ever be found between both. At first, the job wasn't bad enough to take much of a toll on me, and after all, life could be a lot worse. But soon, I began to notice a trickle-down effect in the rest of my life. Every thought, idea, and passion was being funneled into a capitalist content machine, and I spent most of each day writing clickbait articles about films and filmmakers I didn't care about. I was in a creative job, but but all my creative energy was being mined by a publication that chugged articles like they were produced by a machine, and with all my creative energy going to my job, I was soon left with very little energy for my own projects. My scripts were gathering dust, and any video essay I started was quickly abandoned after struggling to muster a single word. And as someone whose entire sense of self-worth comes from my work and creative output, I quickly began to feel quite bad, trapped between what I really wanted to do and my inability to realise these goals. Everyone kept telling me to stick it out, that the job looked good on paper, it would lead to better things, it wasn't that bad in the grand scheme of things. But sometimes it is what it isn't. It was a job, but it wasn't a triangle. Every now and then you'll find yourself at a crossroads, a point of no return. You realise you walked through the wrong door but aren't quite sure how to leave the room. I was just biding my time, paying the bills, doing the dishes, getting through each workday but pining towards the last one. Fast forward a few months later. I won't go into the gory details, but my career took a turn for the worse. At the time of writing this, I'm still in the thick of the fallout caused by this job, but it crushed my confidence in a way that I haven't experienced before. I began to doubt myself, my ideas, my voice as a writer, as a creative, whether there was a place for me in the industry, whether I should retrain, or if I even had anything to offer. I tried to make videos but hated everything I wrote. I recorded videos but hated hearing my voice when I tried to edit. The folder of abandoned projects piled up, the sight of which only made me resent myself more. I hated that I couldn't create anything that was just for me, that I was just a robot to the company I worked for, and I very slowly started to give up on the idea that I could do something more. And when you start to think less of yourself, you demand less of yourself, believing nothing to be a worthy pursuit because you don't think you'll be able to do it. After a few months of thinking like this, I became complicit with the rhythms of a comfortable but unfulfilling life. And when you go through a period like this, you find yourself beginning to compromise on all the dreams you thought you had. The life you imagined for yourself begins to shift, moulding your plans around something that feels realistic, and wondering if you'll be happy with something less. You start to think that this could be the reality of adulthood, a time in which your dreams start to dissolve and you adjust to a realistically attainable future, even if it's one where you aren't really happy. But sometimes, when you're stuck in a pit, the best thing to jolt you out of it is to sink a little deeper and realise how far you are beneath the surface. The gory details of my professional turn for the worse pushed me to the end of my tether, and I later realised that rock bottom was exactly the place I needed to be. After taking a detour on the wrong path, you might not immediately realise or admit your mistake. There was a gut feeling from the start that you tried to set aside, but regardless, the seed of doubt grows and becomes hard to ignore, creating an avalanche of moments that leave you with an increasingly sour taste about the path you're on. This feeling will begin with small moments. For example, you meet a new person at a party, and you notice that you don't feel so proud when you talk about what you do. You're introduced to someone you admire at work, and feel less confident anytime you're asked to talk about yourself, slightly embarrassed about your life compared to somebody who, in your eyes, is doing everything you want to do. Your face goes more red than normal. You wonder why you feel like you did when you were in high school. During the kinds of conversations that used to inspire you, you now withdraw from them, somehow making you feel bitter and only reminding you of a time when these passions coincided with a simultaneous belief that they would one day amount to something. There won't be a light bulb moment in which you suddenly realise you need to get out of the pit, but a gradual thought that snowballs and all of a sudden becomes inescapable. It might feel like rock bottom, but it's from this point that you start plotting your escape and finally see a way out of the pit. Sometimes confusion is exactly what you need to find clarity. Feeling lost and stuck in a job I hated only made what I truly wanted all the more clear, and you realise that this period was the final and crucial step in preparing you for change. Because what goes up must come from down. You don't know what a material is made of until it's burning. And when reflecting on my 20s so far, I realised that this sentiment has defined this decade of my life. You never know how a risk will pan out, but you find out what you're truly made of after setting yourself on fire and burning the bridges in front of you. The right path might only become clear after the old one has been destroyed. And during my last few years in the film industry, I stuck to a conventional path that I thought would one day bring progress. You believe that if you work enough shitty jobs, then you'll eventually be rewarded. You're told it's a battle of perseverance and good things will come to the last one standing. And while I've had huge learning experiences from these jobs, none were quite what I expected. And after a while, it began to feel like I was stuck on a stagnant path in an industry that didn't have a place for me at all. But weirdly enough, it was this thought that freed me from my rut. Knowing that if I was going to get out of it, I needed to quit my dead-end job and metaphorically burn the path I had been on. And after thinking for a while about the best way to do this, the final step to my great escape eventually came to life, even if it vaguely threatened my own. By this point, you might have wondered why I'm in a hospital. And believe it or not, being here was the final step to my master plan after realising that I could afford to quit my job after taking part in a paid medical trial. Some might think it's a little extreme, and it's definitely a byproduct of late-stage capitalism when you're left with no choice but to inject yourself with diseases for money, but I decided that the risks that came with doing the trial were worth my creative and temporary financial freedom. And so I went into a hospital room for 2 weeks and prayed that I wouldn't get seriously ill. Luckily, my time in there wasn't too bad. The days went by fairly quickly. I watched a lot of films, read some books, and looked out the window whenever I missed being outside. I've noticed that down there's been some kind of poo explosion. But more importantly, it gave me time to realise the next step of my plan. And so, on my first day of isolation, I handed in my notice and started working on this video.
Ambivalence is a disease. I think I have a disease called ambivalence. No.
This moment will be the moment of something real and fun and inspiring in this God-forsaken business.
I used to want to change the world. Now I just want to leave the room with a little dignity.
It was the best of times. It was the worst of times.
When you're in a rut and feel like nothing is happening, it's only after looking back that you realise you've been in one long skid and actually moving for quite some time. The quarter-life crisis is a crucial part of being in your 20s, because by the time you stop skidding, you're onto a new path. The sweet spot is right in the middle of the crash, because you never know what will be born from the chaos. Breaking point is just the beginning of a new direction. Being stuck in a few consecutively toxic jobs ended up being the rock bottom that I needed to take a risk. Failure makes you more open to the swells of change and chaos, and when fear is no longer ruling your life, curiosity starts to take over instead. The trials and tribulations of the last year only reaffirmed what I really wanted to do, to make video essays, write films, and have time to work on projects that I care about. There might not be a place for me right now, but the new plan is to try and create one for myself. And so, I have no idea how this will work out, and I might completely crash and burn and have to go back to a regular job in a year or so, but I couldn't be happier about it. I'd rather set myself on fire, take a risk, and not know what the future holds than to feel stuck with one I don't want. So this is a really long-winded way of announcing that I'm unemployed again, and some might not see that as a good thing, but I think it's about time we rethink our definition of failure. Because, is it really square one or square fun?
Must